Hey, welcome to episode number 33 of the Go-To Physio podcast. In today's episode, I take you behind the scenes in my staff training this week while we are on lockdown, and more specifically, identifying the characteristics of the patients that when you see them in your diary, your heart sinks. I hope you enjoy the show. Hey, welcome to the Go-To Physio podcast. My name is Dave O'Sullivan and thanks for joining me again today. Well, we are on week 3 of the lockdown now, and what I wanted to do this week is I've said in a Facebook post at the end of last week, I'll be honest, I'm a bit sick of talking about telehealth. I'm a bit sick of talking about marketing and almost the business side of things, cash flow forecasts and all that. So I want to get back to clinical content this week because that's where my passion and heart is at really. And what I wanted to do today's podcast is still help you in terms of overcoming this very tricky situation and get you prepared so that when you are back in the clinic that you can really take forward steps as well, while also getting back on the clinical content side. So what I've been doing this week, as I said, I'm using this as an opportunity, and the more, actually, to be honest, the more we go on and the more I spend time with my staff, the more I realized that this was a blessing in disguise, really, to clean up a lot of things, both with my therapist and with admin staff, in terms of the customer journey for the patient, but also what we're actually doing in the actual treatment session. So what we've been working on this week and identifying is really the things that are the characteristics of a patient where when you see their name in the diary, your heart sinks. Okay, and look, we've all been there. Okay, and if you've never had that, then you must be Mother Teresa. Okay, if you're not going to admit it, that's fair enough. Okay, but I think what's a really, really interesting exercise to do, and this came, I'll be honest, I'm sharing quite a few video clips over the weekend now, the Easter weekend, depending on the time you're listening to this. I'm going to share a lot of the clips of my trainings with my therapists, and this kind of exercise came up by accident actually when Sarah asked the question, and it just triggered me to, or I think it was Amy, and it just triggered it. Me to ask them a question is, okay, with this patient where your heart sinks, list the characteristics that come out when, with that patient, versus list the characteristics of a patient who you really enjoy working with and you love working with. And we kind of brought it, on a deeper level, or one layer down, if you want to call it, as someone who we don't enjoy working with. Usually, they'll have these traits in common where they're not doing their exercises, they're not engaged, they're not motivated, they're just looking for a quick fix, and they don't seem, or the other one is you just don't seem to have a good rapport or a good relationship or feel comfortable in their presence, and that's really, really interesting. And so then we had a look at the characteristics of someone who you enjoy working with, and then you have your obviously your basics of the person you get on really well with, you enjoy their company, they do their exercises, they're meticulous down to the T. That actually Amy said, she said exactly something along, well, not exactly, but something along the lines of, the person comes in and they spend the first 5 minutes telling you exactly what they've done this week, and they're making loads of progress and stuff like that. And I think that word progress is important as well. It's usually the patients that are making progress, they come in all happy, they're the patients that you don't mind, whereas it's the ones that aren't making progress, you almost dread them coming in, because it's awkward, when a patient's not making progress, and you're positioned as the expert and you're the one that's positioned as having all the answers. It can make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. So that was kind of the first layer down. And then when we started to dissect that even further, we kind of got down to the nuts and bolts of it, really. And this is something I'm going to put together a cheat sheet in the coming weeks as well. I'll be sending it to my email list. So anyone who's on on the email list, you'll get a copy of this very shortly. So keep an eye out. And that is the five kind of big things that we brought it down to is when we started to define the patient, and that's kind of where we're at literally today. We've kind of finished up on this today, this part when we've kind of gone through what's happening like really we've been like tearing apart what we're saying to patients in our first session, to ultimately command authority and command buy-in to exercises and all the stuff that we can do to overcome the characteristics of a patient that we don't enjoy working with. We've torn it all apart, and we're right down to what we're saying to patients, how we're saying it, and all that. So we've spent a good week working on that. And again, the ultimate outcome of that is what we wanted. Is we want the patient who's committed, motivated. We and they have a clear goal, okay, our end goal, and they're very clear, and we're very clear on where they want to get back to. We design a treatment plan specific to their needs, and ultimately we get on well with them, or certainly we feel comfortable in their presence. So that kind of brings us onto the other side of it, is the characteristics. When we cut all the crap and we get down to the deep side of it, is it's usually a patient with one of these five and a half things that ultimately the driver of the problem. That is that they're not committed enough or not motivated enough. They don't see the value in the sessions, okay, or maybe appreciate the value of what they're doing, or the value of maybe the rehab exercises or something like that. You don't feel very comfortable in their presence, again, or you don't have rapport with the patient at the moment, and there just seems to be a mismatch, or you're not on the same page, where you basically you're trying to take in one direction, they want to go another. That could be someone who just wants hands-on, etc., or they lack clarity. Okay, so what we want by the end of our initial assessment, basically, and again, I think this is really important, and this is something I've posted in the mentorship group yesterday as well, and it's something that the mentorship therapists, and a lot of you listen to the podcast. This is something you're going to see a lot more of in the mentorship, and that's the actual skill set of command and authority. Okay, and I'll talk a lot more about this in coming weeks in the podcast as well. And for the first time now, because I've had time to actually think about this and do bits of role play with my own staff, and I've got really good staff. Very, very fortunate to have great staff. Which isn't fortunate in a way. There's a process we do to make sure we have good staff and the culture's right. So it's not by luck, but that's a conversation for another day. But really good staff whose hearts are in the right place, etc. But they're very different personalities. Okay, so again, how one person says something versus another. If you're just kind of trying to learn off something, then it's going to sound very, very not quite right. Whereas if they truly understand what they're saying, then how they say it in their skin, so to speak, it resonates well with the patient. And what we've kind of come down to is we want, by the end of our initial assessment, is we want to have no doubts in our mind that the patient is committed and motivated, that we've got a clear understanding of where they want to get back to. Okay, and it's not just to get rid of the pain, but what it is they want to get back to, what they need to be able to do, and what they want to be able to do. Okay, and that's two different things that we need to prepare the patient for. Okay, and that's again another episode in itself. What does the patient need to be able to do on a daily basis versus what do they want to be able to do? Okay, and your treatment plan needs to consider both of those. We want to make sure that we have some bit of rapport, or we're getting some bit of a bit more comfortable around the patient after the initial assessment. And again, there's simple ways you can do that, and that you're both feeling comfortable and on the same page. Okay, so being on the same page means you both have clarity on the treatment plan, where you're going, and that you're both going in the same direction, basically. So the treatment plan is specific to goes back to that person's wants and needs,
Hey, I hope you're enjoying today's show. For more clinical content and tips to help you implement this content in the real world, please visit thegotophysio.com for more information, including my 6-step patient adherence checklist, which you can download for free. And also there's more blog content that helps you implement this stuff in the real world. You'll also find links to my YouTube show, The Go-To Physio Show, as well as lots of more information to help you become the go-to therapist, helping real patients get real results in the real world.
And then the final thing that we put down is that we need to obviously be able to rule out any red flags and also identify yellow flags or address these yellow flags in the initial assessment. Okay, so again, you'll see clips of this on our Instagram and our Facebook page. The Go-To Physio Facebook, the Go-To Physio Instagram, you'll pick that up pretty quickly. And I'll be sharing some of this stuff, but I thought it was really, really interesting. And now, as I said, I'm starting to get an understanding of different issues where which is actually, when you think about it, you have time to think about this stuff and look at it. It's actually, a lot of this stuff is very, very straightforward to overcome. Okay, and it always goes back to, and this is the big takeaway, it always goes back to the quality of the questions you're asking a patient. And that's ultimately what we've been doing for the last 2 weeks, and how we kind of got to this point and actually done that exercise is we've been working on asking better questions. Okay, so if we ask better questions, we're going to get better answers. Okay, and one of the drills that I have dementia therapists doing now is, if you had only 8 questions to ask a patient in the subjective assessment, so that you could have no doubt in your mind that they're committed, motivated, you're clear on what they really want to get back to and what they need to get back to, you included in those 8 questions is going to give you enough to build some rapport or relationship with the patient, and you both are comfortable and on the same page of where they want to get back to, and you've been able to rule out red flags, yellow flags. So ruling out red flags would be, classified as one question, so to speak. Okay, just to keep it straightforward. So really good exercise, making you get higher quality answers from asking higher quality questions, basically. Okay, so something to think about this week, something a little bit different, but again, I thought it, I think a lot of therapists might find this useful, and it's something that we were a bit skeptical at the start when we were doing this stuff last week, and now this week is a big shift in the therapists, and I think they can start to really see the value in this now as well, and reflecting on what they could have done with past patients who maybe weren't as motivated and weren't as committed. And that all goes back down, I talk a lot about authority. I think it's a very, very important skill that a therapist has with a patient, where they command that authority in the session. Whereas, I think a lot of therapists that lack authority, that's where the patient almost guides the treatment plan, and the patient kind of wants to lie in the bed for an hour or wants to lie in the bed for half an hour and just get hands on. Okay, so I think that to me is a symptom of a lack of authority, and I think there's a lot of stuff we can do in the initial assessment to overcome that. Anyway, that's my thoughts. That's where my head's at this week. That's the opportunity that I'm taking this week while we're on lockdown with the staff to do staff training is to work on all of these aspects. And as I said, hopefully you got something from that this week. I will see you next week again when, as I said, I'll be sharing more and more clips of staff training. So we might keep along this team for another week or two. And then I've got a little bit of a mini series for the podcast coming up very, very soon for you as well. Been working hard behind the scenes on getting a cheat sheet ready, and it's a cheat sheet on, we've called it the shocking secrets of the diaphragm and pelvic floor PDF. Okay, so again, keep an eye out for it. It's the title of it, it's obviously in tongue in cheek, but it may shock quite a few therapists. Anyone who's been listening to the podcast, it may or may not shock you, some of the stuff. But obviously, you need, if you've listened to the last few podcasts, you can kind of see why we've called it that. And working on that, so in that PDF, I've put together a cheat sheet for the mentorship therapists of the influence of the pelvic floor and the diaphragm can have on the rest of the body, and really how, to help you look at the body as a whole. So I'm going to be making that available to the public very soon. Keep an eye out for that PDF. You'll find that at www.thegotophysio.com either next week or the week after. And hopefully you'll enjoy that. And I've got a bit more content all around that, and help you look at the body as one, looking at the person rather than just the side of pain, and designing a treatment plan, a step-by-step treatment plan for the patient that actually gets them where they want to get to, rather than you trying to take a patient with your skill set, and trying to mold them into exercises that you feel comfortable teaching with. Is actually understanding what they need and designing the exercises to fit their needs and wants. Okay, so that's it for this week. Head over to www.thegotophysio.com and you'll find lots of resources there as always. Okay, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I will see you next week.